Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the life you have been living might not truly belong to you. Every choice you thought you made, every belief you proudly carried, even the desires that seemed to come from deep inside you. What if they were never really yours? What if they were borrowed from the people around you, from society's rules, from your family's expectations, and from the hidden conditioning that shaped you before you even knew it? This is the unsettling truth that Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, wanted us to face. He believed that most people never discover who they truly are because they are trapped in what he called the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. The persona begins as a simple necessity. It helps us interact with the world, get along with others, and fit into the groups that raise us. But over time, this mask becomes so tightly attached that we start to believe it is our real face. We stop asking ourselves whether we actually believe in the values we claim, or whether we even enjoy the roles we play. Instead, we adapt, conform, and hide the parts of ourselves that don't match the expectations of those around us. Think back to your childhood. How many times were you told to stop being too emotional, too curious, or too different? Slowly, you learned that certain sides of yourself weren't safe to show, so you buried them. This is where the first dangerous place of the mind begins, the trap of living entirely through your persona. The danger lies in mistaking the mask for your identity. When that happens, you lose touch with your real emotions, your authentic creativity, and your true calling. You become a role, not a person. You might appear successful, respected, or even admired, but deep inside, you carry an emptiness that never goes away. Jung warned that people who live only through their persona end up hollow, constantly chasing validation from others, yet never finding peace. So ask yourself honestly, are you living as who you are, or as who you think you are supposed to be? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this question is the first step to uncovering the deeper dangers of your own psychology. If the persona is the mask you show to the world, then the shadow is everything you hide from it. This is the second dangerous place in Jung's psychology, and perhaps the most misunderstood. The shadow is not just about the dark urges or flaws you deny. It is also the unacknowledged desires, the rejected strengths, and the raw emotions you pushed away because you were told they were unacceptable. The shadow forms whenever you are told to suppress something that feels natural. For example, a child who expresses anger and is punished learns to bury that anger deep inside. A teenager who shows vulnerability and is mocked for it hides that sensitivity from everyone, including themselves. Over years, these buried traits do not disappear. They live on in the unconscious, silently shaping your behavior in ways you might not even realize. The danger of the shadow is that it never stays hidden forever. Instead, it leaks out through what Jung called projection. Have you ever disliked someone instantly without knowing why? Or been irritated by a specific behavior in others that seemed to trigger something inside you? Often this is your shadow speaking. The qualities you reject in yourself are mirrored back to you through the people around you. You are not just reacting to them, you are reacting to your own hidden self. This is why Jung insisted that what disturbs us in others often reveals the very traits we have not accepted within ourselves. The more we deny the shadow, the more control it has over us. It shapes our choices, sabotages our relationships, and fuels the cycles of fear and insecurity that keep us stuck. Yet the shadow is not only a danger, it is also a hidden treasure. Jung believed that facing the shadow is the doorway to true self-discovery. The anger you bury could hold the strength to stand up for yourself. The sensitivity you hide could be the key to deep empathy and creativity. The parts of you that feel shameful or dangerous are often the very pieces that make you whole. But most people avoid this work because it feels uncomfortable. It is easier to blame others, stay distracted, and keep the mask of the persona firmly in place than to confront the darkness inside. Imagine for a moment living your entire life controlled by parts of yourself you never look at. The constant fear of rejection, the self-doubt that keeps you silent, the jealousy or resentment that creeps into your relationships, these are not random emotions. They are messages from your shadow, demanding to be acknowledged. The longer you ignore them, the louder they become. Jung warned that people who refuse to face their shadow end up consumed by it. They project endlessly, living in conflict with the world outside because they are at war with the world inside. The real danger is not that the shadow exists, it is that you refuse to see it. Confronting it does not mean you must act out your darkest impulses. It means you accept that they are a part of you. You bring them into awareness so they no longer control you from the depths of the unconscious. This act of integration, as Jung called it, is the beginning of authenticity. It is the moment you stop running from yourself and start reclaiming your power. So here is the challenge. Think of one quality in others that triggers you the most. Ask yourself honestly, could this be something you have not accepted in yourself? Write it in the comments, because when you name your shadow, you begin to take its power away. This uncomfortable exercise is not just reflection, it is the first step toward freeing your mind from one of its most dangerous prisons. If the shadow is the hidden darkness within us, then the next dangerous place Jung described is the realm of archetypes. Archetypes are ancient patterns of behavior and universal roles that exist in the collective unconscious. They shape the stories we tell, the myths we pass down, and the ways we see ourselves. The hero, the mother, the rebel, the victim, the wise old man, these are not just characters in books and movies. They are living psychological forces inside every one of us. From birth, we are surrounded by these patterns, and they guide how we imagine life should unfold. While archetypes can provide meaning and direction, the danger comes when a person becomes trapped inside a single archetype, living as if that role is their entire identity. Imagine someone who falls deeply into the archetype of the hero. They believe their purpose is always to save others, to fix, to sacrifice, and to carry burdens that are not theirs. At first, this might feel noble and empowering. But over time, the hero trap becomes exhausting. The person burns out, resents others, and feels crushed by expectations. On the opposite side, think of someone stuck in the victim archetype. They see themselves as powerless, always wronged, always unlucky. This pattern creates a cycle of self-pity and dependency, where growth becomes impossible. The rebel archetype can be just as dangerous when lived unconsciously. Constantly fighting authority, rejecting structure, and needing to break rules can leave a person isolated and self-destructive. The truth is, archetypes are not inherently good or bad. They are neutral forces of the psyche. The danger appears when we identify so strongly with one archetype that we forget we are more than a role. Life becomes narrow, scripted, and repetitive. You stop asking, "What do I truly want?" and instead unconsciously follow the script of the archetype you have become trapped in. Jung warned that this kind of identification creates imbalance in the psyche. It cuts you off from other aspects of your personality that are equally necessary for wholeness. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. A person stuck in the archetype of the caregiver might devote their entire life to serving others, never acknowledging their own needs. On the surface, they are admired for being selfless. Inside, they feel drained and resentful. Another person stuck in the archetype of the ruler may seek control in every situation. Their need to dominate might earn them success in business, but ruin their personal relationships. When we live too long in one archetype, we lose the flexibility to adapt, to grow, and to discover the parts of ourselves that remain unexplored. Jung believed that the unconscious often pushes us into these archetypes as a way of teaching us lessons. But if we never realize what is happening, we become puppets of these ancient patterns. Our choices seem personal, yet they are actually guided by forces far older than us. Recognizing this can be unsettling, but it is also liberating. Once you realize you are caught in an archetypal role, you gain the power to step back and ask whether it truly serves you. The hero does not always have to save. The victim does not always have to suffer. The rebel does not always have to destroy. You can shift, expand, and reclaim your individuality beyond the archetype. So here is something to reflect on. Think about your own life. What role do you find yourself playing over and over again? Do people always come to you for help, seeing you as the rescuer? Do you often feel unlucky, seeing yourself as the one who suffers? Or do you always fight rules, even when they could help you? Recognizing your dominant archetype can be the first step to breaking free from its grip. Share in the comments which role you suspect has shaped your story the most. By doing so, you not only acknowledge it, you begin to take back the authorship of your own life. One of the most fascinating yet dangerous places Carl Jung described lies in the balance or imbalance between the anima and the animus. These are the inner counterparts of gendered energy within the psyche. The anima represents the feminine side within a man, while the animus represents the masculine side within a woman. Jung believed that every human being carries both energies, regardless of biological sex. To be whole, a person must recognize and integrate this hidden side of themselves. But when this balance is rejected or distorted, the mind can fall into deep conflict, confusion, and even psychological destruction. In many societies, men are taught from an early age to suppress anything seen as feminine. They are told not to cry, not to show vulnerability, not to nurture or soften. Over time, their anima, the inner feminine, is buried, dismissed as weakness. The result is often men who appear strong on the outside, but are emotionally disconnected, unable to express tenderness, and trapped in anger or detachment. On the other hand, women are often told to suppress traits associated with masculinity. They may be discouraged from being assertive, ambitious, or outspoken. The animus within them is forced into hiding, leaving them insecure, dependent, or uncertain about their own power. The danger of rejecting anima or animus is that it creates imbalance. A man disconnected from his anima struggles to understand his emotions or connect deeply with others. He might swing between cold rationality and explosive outbursts. A woman disconnected from her animus might feel silenced, doubting her ability to act decisively or stand firmly in her truth. But there is another danger too. Sometimes, instead of being ignored, the anima or animus can take over entirely. When the anima dominates a man unconsciously, he may become irrationally emotional, moody, or lost in fantasy. When the animus dominates a woman unconsciously, she may become overly rigid, argumentative, or consumed by harsh inner criticism. Jung saw this imbalance play out not just in individuals, but also in relationships. Many romantic struggles come from people projecting their inner anima or animus onto their partners. A man who has not integrated his anima may expect his partner to carry all the emotional depth he lacks, burdening her with unrealistic demands. A woman who has not integrated her animus may project her inner masculine image onto her partner, holding him to impossible standards of strength or authority. These projections create tension, disappointment, and repeated cycles of conflict. But within this danger lies the possibility of growth. Jung emphasized that meeting the anima or animus is one of the most transformative steps in self-discovery. For men, embracing the anima means reconnecting with intuition, creativity, and emotional honesty. For women, embracing the animus means stepping into confidence, independence, and clarity of thought. When these inner counterparts are acknowledged instead of rejected, the psyche begins to heal. The man no longer fears vulnerability, and the woman no longer doubts her strength. Together, they embody a fuller, more authentic human experience. The challenge, of course, is that integration requires courage. It means questioning the roles and labels society has placed on you. It means admitting that what you rejected in yourself may be the very thing you need to grow. This is not easy work, and that is why this psychological place can feel so dangerous. But ignoring it comes at a higher cost. A life half-lived, defined by imbalance and projection. So here is a question for you to reflect on. Do you see signs of your hidden side, your anima or animus, trying to speak through your behavior, your relationships, or your inner dialogue? Do you suppress it, or do you allow it to guide you? Share your thoughts in the comments, because naming this hidden counterpart could be the first step toward restoring balance in your own mind. The fifth dangerous place in Jung's map of the mind is the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of inherited images, patterns, and instincts that humanity shares. Unlike the personal unconscious, which is shaped by your individual experiences, the collective unconscious belongs to all of us. It carries the memories of countless generations, the myths that have repeated across cultures, and the universal symbols that appear in dreams and stories no matter where you are in the world. On the surface, this might sound fascinating, almost mystical, but there is a danger hidden here, and it is one that most people never recognize. When you lose yourself in the collective unconscious, you begin to mistake borrowed beliefs for your own truth. Think about how society shapes us from the moment we are born. Before we can speak, we are given identities. Boy or girl, strong or weak, obedient or rebellious. As we grow, culture teaches us what is good, what is bad, what is valuable, and what is shameful. These lessons are not neutral. They come from deep inherited patterns of humanity that repeat themselves endlessly. The danger is that if you never question them, you end up living a life that is not truly yours. You become a product of the collective unconscious, rather than an individual with a conscious choice. Jung warned that people often confuse conformity with belonging. Following traditions, repeating cultural norms, or adopting popular beliefs might make you feel safe and accepted. But beneath that safety, there's often a quiet emptiness. You may succeed in meeting society's expectations, yet fail to meet your own soul's needs. For example, many people dedicate their lives to chasing external success because the collective unconscious tells them that wealth and status equal worth. But years later, they discover that despite achieving everything society values, they feel unfulfilled, as if something vital is missing. That missing piece is individuality, the part of you that cannot be defined by inherited patterns. The collective unconscious also shows up in the way groups behave. Mass movements, ideologies, and cultural trends are often fueled by these deep patterns. People swept up in collective energy may act in ways they would never act alone. They surrender their critical thinking and individuality to the power of the group. History is full of examples of how dangerous this can be, from destructive political movements to blind obedience to authority. The collective unconscious holds both humanity's wisdom and its darkest impulses, and if you are not careful, you can become its instrument without realizing it. Yet Jung did not see the collective unconscious only as a trap. He believed it also contains immense wisdom. The myths, symbols, and archetypes it carries can guide us toward deeper understanding of ourselves. But the key is balance. To be whole, you must learn from the collective unconscious without being consumed by it. You can recognize the universal patterns that influence your thoughts and still choose consciously which ones to embrace and which ones to let go. This is what it means to individuate, to separate yourself from the collective and step into your true identity. Ask yourself this: how many of your beliefs, desires, and fears are truly your own, and how many are inherited from your family, culture, or society? Have you ever questioned whether the values you live by actually resonate with your inner truth? Reflecting on this can feel unsettling because it forces you to strip away layers of identity you thought were solid. But it is also liberating. When you step out of the maze of the collective unconscious, you begin to hear your own voice more clearly. So here is a challenge for you. Identify one belief or value you grew up with that you have never questioned. Ask yourself if it genuinely belongs to you or if it is simply part of the collective programming. Share your answer in the comments, because this question could be the first crack in the walls of the unconscious patterns that quietly shape your life. The sixth dangerous place in Jung's psychology is the realm of the ego, that fragile yet stubborn structure of the mind that convinces you it is your true self. The ego is necessary. It gives you a sense of I. It helps you navigate the world, and it creates the illusion of stability in an uncertain life. Without an ego, you would not be able to function as a separate being. But while the ego is useful, it becomes dangerous when you mistake it for your entire identity. The danger lies in forgetting that the ego is only a construct, a story you tell yourself, not the essence of who you truly are. The ego defines itself through labels and roles. It says, I am successful, I am a failure, I am strong, I am weak. It builds walls around these labels, clinging to them as if losing them would mean losing existence itself. This is why people often fall into crisis when their identities are challenged. Someone who has built their ego entirely on their career feels destroyed when they lose their job. Someone who has built their ego around being admired feels crushed when they are criticized. The ego cannot tolerate cracks in its story, so it defends itself fiercely, often through denial, arrogance, or blame. Jung warned that the ego illusion is one of the most persistent traps of the psyche. When you identify too strongly with the ego, you become disconnected from the deeper layers of your unconscious, where your real self is waiting. Instead of growing into wholeness, you cling to the surface of identity. You become a prisoner of image. Think about social media in today's world. People craft carefully curated versions of themselves online, chasing likes and approval. The ego feeds on this attention, but the cost is authenticity. The more you feed the ego, the more fragile it becomes, because its survival depends on constant reinforcement from outside sources. Another danger of the ego is its tendency to separate. The ego thrives on comparison. It says, I am better than you, or I am worse than you. It creates endless divisions between self and other, success and failure, worthy and unworthy. This separation leads to envy, pride, insecurity, and conflict. Deep inside, the ego fears annihilation. It knows it is only a temporary construction, so it clings desperately to whatever gives it the illusion of permanence. But this very clinging keeps you from experiencing the deeper truth of the self, the part of you that is beyond labels and beyond comparison. The irony is that the ego itself is not evil. It is a tool. But when you forget that it is only a tool, you suffer. Jung believed that true psychological growth requires what he called the ego death, not the destruction of the ego, but the realization that it is not the ultimate reality. When you stop identifying solely with the ego, you gain access to the larger self, the wholeness of your being. This does not mean you no longer function in the world. You still have an identity, a role, a story, but you no longer confuse the mask with the truth. You can lose a job, a role, or even a reputation without feeling like your soul has been shattered, because you know you are more than those temporary images. Ask yourself this: what label or role have you attached to so strongly that losing it would feel like losing yourself? Is it your career, your relationship, your achievements, or even your pain? Reflect on it and be honest with yourself. Share your answer in the comments, because recognizing the grip of the ego is the first step toward loosening it. The moment you see the ego illusion for what it is, you begin to move beyond one of the most dangerous prisons of the mind. The seventh and final dangerous place in Jung's psychology is the illusion of a fixed self. This is perhaps the most subtle and unsettling trap because it feels so natural. Most people believe they are one consistent identity moving through time, unchanging at the core, defined by their past experiences, their culture, their name, their memories. But Jung and many other thinkers recognize that this belief is an illusion. The self is not fixed. It is fluid, evolving, and far more expansive than we have been led to believe. The danger lies in clinging to the idea that this is who I am, and I cannot be anything else. That belief keeps people locked inside narrow versions of themselves, afraid of change, resistant to growth, and blind to the vast potential that exists within. When you believe you are only your fixed identity, every threat to it feels like an attack on your existence. If you see yourself as someone who must always be strong, vulnerability feels unbearable. If you define yourself as intelligent, failure feels like death. If you cling to an identity as a victim, you may unconsciously resist healing, because healing would mean losing the self you've come to know. In all of these cases, the belief in a permanent self limits you, turning life into a cycle of defending and protecting the fragile structure you think you are. Jung saw this as one of the deepest illusions that prevents individuation, the process of becoming whole. Think of how often people say, "This is just who I am." Sometimes that statement is true in the sense of acknowledging personality traits, but more often it is a defense mechanism, a way of avoiding change. It is the ego's attempt to keep things stable. But the truth is, who you are today is not who you were 10 years ago, and it will not be who you are 10 years from now. Your consciousness is alive, dynamic, and always unfolding. To cling to a static idea of self is to deny the very nature of being. The danger of this illusion is that it cuts you off from transformation. You stop exploring, you stop questioning, and you stop reaching for the deeper layers of your psyche that are waiting to emerge. Jung believed that beyond the ego, beyond the roles and the surface-level identity, lies the self with a capital S. This self is not a mask, not a story, but the totality of your being, the conscious and unconscious, the light and the shadow, the masculine and feminine energies, the archetypes and instincts, all integrated into a vast wholeness. Tapping into this larger self is the goal of individuation, and it requires dissolving the illusion of a fixed, small self. But doing so can feel terrifying. The mind clings to stability. It craves certainty. The thought of letting go of everything you believe yourself to be feels like stepping into the unknown. And yet that unknown is where true freedom lies. What would it mean to live beyond a fixed identity? It would mean being able to reinvent yourself, not as an escape, but as an unfolding of what has always been within you. It would mean no longer being paralyzed by fear of failure, because failure no longer defines you. It would mean no longer living for approval, because the opinions of others cannot touch the deeper self. It would mean embracing change, knowing that you're not losing who you are, but expanding into more of it. This shift changes the way you see everything, from relationships to work to purpose. The most dangerous part of the illusion of self is that it is invisible. People rarely question it. They live entire lives defending a version of themselves that was built by childhood conditioning, cultural expectations, or trauma. They never stop to ask, am I really this person? Or is this just a role I learned to play? Jung's insight reminds us that the self you cling to is only a fragment of something much greater. The moment you begin to question the illusion, cracks appear and light comes through. So here is the challenge. Take a moment to reflect on the labels and stories you hold most tightly. Who would you be if those labels were stripped away? If you could not define yourself by your job, your achievements, your failures, or your past, what would remain? This is not an easy question, but it is the one that leads to freedom. Comment your thoughts, because your reflections might not only awaken you, but also inspire others who are trapped in the same illusion. Jung believed that life does not truly begin until you find yourself, and to find yourself, you must first let go of who you think you are. The illusion of self may be the most dangerous place of all, but it is also the doorway to the vast, limitless being you were always meant to become.